Stephen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Calvin Roper, and you are joining me here tonight around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, a 3.9 kilometer um, road course that we're having the second round of our Chase for Pace Porsche Cup here tonight. And we are just coming up onto the end of free practice here, but we're having a bit of technical issues. We're just quickly restarting the server to allow our drivers to get back in and ensure that we have smooth sailing for the rest of this evening. Coming off the back of a very exciting round one, if I do say so myself, around Miami GP circuit, host to the Formula One Miami GP. Last time out, we had our first winner of the series, Kurt Moss, who is no stranger to the top step of the podium, followed closely with where he finished that race with 12 points. And following closely behind him was newcomer Raven Plummer with 10 points. Behind her was Mikhail Charles, I think still on keyboard and mouse, putting in an excellent performance last time out, coming home with 8 points. In fourth place was Mark Anthony Eaton, coming home with 6 points. In fifth, we have Roger Keller, all the way from Switzerland, with 4 points. Vincent da Silva, president of GP Panama, our friends down in Panama there. He came home with 3 points. We had Rafael Rivas coming home with 2 points. Kimani Eastman, Mr. Consistency, coming home with the last points giving place, in eighth. And in P9, we had Alex Jarrett, unfortunately not picking up any points. Jaden Harrison in 10th, Estefano Barrera in 11th, and Daniel Velez in 12th. Drivers have had days now to put in laps and practice here around the road course for Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And we're definitely seeing here, I'm looking at the live timing and the stored times, Raven Plummer giving Mark Anthony Eaton a run for his money, putting in 100 laps. Usually it's Mark Anthony Eaton we'd see with the highest amount of laps, put in during practice over the week. But Raven Plummer there with 100 laps, and it definitely shows she currently holds the fastest time of a 137.6. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure if you realize, it's kind of hard to miss, but this is the first race of the series with rain. It will be raining throughout the entire. We'll have weather conditions like this throughout the entire session, through practice, qualifying, and the race. And Raven there showing that, apart from her natural speed, showing that rain is the great equalizer, as she has edged out Kurt Moss for that top step in practice so far. Kurt Moss managing a 138.2, just six tenths off that first position. Mark Anthony Eaton with a 139.8, 1.5 seconds from that time set by Kurt Moss ahead of him. Kimani Eastman a 140.4. Roger Keller with a 140.46. Only 5 hundredths between them. It's looking very, very close for during practice here around Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And the drivers seem to have gotten back onto the server. And here's Roger Keller on his outlap to begin. Just a 3 minutes, a 3 minutes worth of practice to ensure everyone gets into the server all right, and everyone has their kinks sorted out. It's going to be a 50-minute race here around the road circuit. Drivers will not have a mandatory pit stop. As you can imagine, with this heavy rain, it's going to be taking as much of a toll on the tires, although Roger here showing that he does have to be looking for a bit of wet spots here around the circuit. Even though it's not drying out, you still want to move offline every now and then to ensure that you are keeping those tires cool, as we see the brake rotors on that Porsche 911 992 GT3 car. Race machine there, those brake rotors getting very hot, glowing white hot actually, as he's coming up here now through the chicanes of turn 5 and 6, ensuring not to go out too wide there. Drivers are not allowed to use the extra bit of road there to the left. It's 2 tires within the white lines at all times, coming up to the heavy braking zone here of turn 7, avoiding that rather large sausage curve there on the inside. Hopefully that does not prove to be a point of contention for the drivers throughout the race, but we're seeing that the weather is going to play a big part in this race. Can you imagine all 8 drivers lined up on the starting grid? The spray is going to be crazy, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you remember Spa 2021, but I surely do. In Formula One, it was absolutely wet and there was very low visibility, but it was very realistic. And, here at the JSRA, that's what we're all about: realism and, fine tuning that racecraft, because we have a bit of contact between Vincent da Silva and Kurt Moss there around turn 7 that seems to have gotten cleared up. Drivers, just, having a bit of battling before the real racing begins to test the limits of their machines, test their braking points. It's going to be a fight of who can keep their car pointed in the straight line. We know these curbs around Indianapolis are very slippery, and drivers will be trying to keep it out of the dirt. They're struggling for traction. There is Roger Killer, that mid-engined Porsche, really showing that it's a challenge to drive in the dry. It's definitely a challenge to drive in the wet. But he has himself firmly in P2 right now. The little free practice session is just about finished, and we will be heading into the qualifying session. Ladies and gentlemen, why don't we just listen to the beautiful sound of that 6-cylinder boxer. Here we are. We're just taking a look there at the livery of Raven Plummer, hailing from the United States of America here, joining us for the second round of the JSRA Porsche Cup Series. Here is Kimani Eastman in his custom livery, Sakura Trakun. Might not be able to translate what that means, but it's a very unique livery here. Looks absolutely gorgeous on the 992 GT3 race car. But ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting the qualifying session shortly. Just about a minute left until quali begins. Let's take a look at Mark Anthony Eaton's livery. Custom made by Mark Anthony Eaton himself. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we will be playing our doing a quick intro and then heading straight into qualifying. And qualifying is underway. The drivers are heading out on their out lap, having had so many practice laps, especially the driver we're on board with right now, Raven Plummer, 100, over 100 practice laps throughout the week, heading out on her first out lap to begin her first qualifying lap. All eyes are going to be on the American to set a benchmark as the first few minutes of qualifying ticks down. We now have 13 minutes remaining of the 15 minutes of qualifying, coming around the final few corners here of Sector 3, getting all the checks and balances in order before heading around the final corner, heading onto that start-finish stretch, going across the brickyard around Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And we are on board with Raven Plummer for her first lap. Going across the line, hard to spot your braking point here, heading into the first corner, avoiding that bump on the inside there. Two wheels within the white line. This lap is valid, coming around turn 2 and turns 3. Don't allow the car to drift out too wide, heading into turn 4. Get that car rotated, struggling for traction here. Probably a couple of laps before the tires are up to temperature to have maximum grip here. Heading down into the second heavy braking zone in turn 7. All the way to the right-hand side. Watch those brake rotors light up as she just goes over the curb a bit, not losing too much time. It's only the banker lap. Just want to get a time down on the board because I'm expecting it's going to be, a bit of a melee as the drivers absolutely push towards the closing end of the qualifying section, running out onto the bank section now of the outer section of the oval, spotting your braking point, avoid that curb on the inside. She does so very well. Switch back to the right-hand side for the second to last corner. Get that car rotated, not too much power too quickly. And around the final corner, back down the start-finish stretch. A somewhat clean lap there from the American heading down the final stretch here, crossing the line. And it's a 1:38.2 to start us off here in qualifying around Indianapolis. Coming up across the line, second across the line, it looks like it's Kurt Moss. Kurt Moss with a 1:39.0, 8/10 shy of that banker lap set by Raven Plummer. Third across the line was Michelle Wallace. Michelle with a 1:39.5. Roger Keller was in fourth, is now beat by Jaden Harrison with a 1:40. Roger Keller with a 1:42, currently in fifth. Luis Daniel Velez not setting a representative time just as yet, 2 minutes and 6 seconds. But Plummer is in the third sector, coming around that bank section there. Finishing up the third sector, she is now coming around the third to last corner, using up that inside curb there. Maybe it does give a bit of a boost. Drivers will be looking to maximize their traction, to maximize every bit of this track here, especially in these conditions. Coming back across the line, I don't think it's going to be an improvement. No, it's not. She does set the fastest third sector, so maybe there is something in it using those curbs, but not quite the improvement she would have been looking for. Da Silva here coming across the line. We will be seeing an improvement from him. He moves straight up into fifth position, followed by Kurt Moss. Kurt Moss does not improve. It was a 1:47.4 from him the last time around. Now comes Joshua Brady across the line, and Joshua Brady does a 2 minute 18 seconds. So that may have been just his outlap. Michelle Wallace across the line now. and does not improve. It's a 139.5. Actually, he does improve. That's his fastest lap so far, followed by Jaden Harrison with a 139.8, his fastest lap as well. And here's Mark Anthony Eaton and Kimani Eastman coming up across the line. Kimani Eastman with the fastest middle sector moves himself up into P4. Mark Anthony Eaton in P7 for the time being, but with 8 minutes left to go in this qualifying session, it could go anyone's way. Only 8 tenths separate the top two, and 4 tenths behind them is Michelle Wallace, who is known to bang out an exceptional lap in the closing stages. He is not quite a one-lap wonder, but I've seen it before, and I'm expecting the same of Jaden Harrison and Mark Anthony Eaton to really start applying the pressure on the top two. 8 minutes left in this session. Here's here's Kurt Moss closing out his third flying lap around the final corner. And it's not enough to move him from second position, as Raven Plummer has improved as well. But we have the next batch of drivers coming up across the line. It's Roger Keller, followed by Jaden Harrison, followed by Luis Daniel Velez. All drivers seem to be improving. We have Velez moving up into ninth position, Jaden Harrison in fifth. So there's still some more time to be found. As we see Kurt Moss there, his personal best in the first sector, heading down into turn 7, getting that car turned in nicely. Flicking through the quick right-hander and left-hander here before the run back onto the back bank section of the oval. Kurt Moss looks to be very fast here in the third sector. Fastest middle sector so far, a 10th up on Raven Plummer. Spotting his braking marker coming into the third sector, the final sector here. Car running off there a bit wide, missing their braking marker. But Kurt Moss seems to have it all sewn up here. He may be challenging for that top spot. Raven Plummer was just across the line. Her last lap a 137.8, rather a 138.9, but her best lap a 137.8. Here's Kurt Moss out of the final corner, coming down the start-finish straight. Can he do it? He crosses the line, and it's not enough. A 138.2. His best lap so far, but not quite enough to dethrone Plummer. Here's Jaden Harrison, seems to be having a bit of a hard time putting the lap together, but coming around now to start another lap. 5 minutes, just over 5 minutes left in this session. And the order is Plummer, Moss, Wallace, Eastman, Harrison, Da Silva, Eaton, Keller, Velez, and Brady. And we're still on board with Jaden Harrison, personal best in the first and second sector, coming around the final corner onto the back stretch now, the start-finish stretch rather, coming across the brickyard. And Jaden Harrison moves himself up into P4, displacing Kimani Eastman, who is currently in the pits, only 2 tenths between them, 2 tenths between fourth and fifth. Vincent Da Silva still in P6, still in the pits as well, only a tenth off Eastman. So it's very close there between P4, 5, and 6. 3.8 tenths, call it 4 tenths between first and second position. Kurt Moss still out there trying his best to best the American and take that P1 position. He's very used to battling for P1, 2, or 3. But Raven Plummer seems to be comfortable with that time, currently in the pits, with only 3 minutes left to go in qualifying. Michelle Wallace baffling 1.3 seconds off Kurt Moss, 1.6 off the top step. Jaden Harrison there having a bit of an accident around T7, but Mark Anthony Eaton here, 3 tenths off the pace, did a personal best in the first sector, coming across the start finish line now, and stays P7. This car seems to be, well, as I said, we'd usually see Eaton with the most amount of laps during practice. Maybe this performance here showing that he didn't do enough practice, maybe not on the servo, or maybe just the rain proving to be a bit much for this Porsche here. But it's not about qualifying alone, it's also about the race, and we know that we're going to see a masterclass of racing here from the likes of Mark Anthony Eaton as he's flying through that first chicane, powering down the backstretch there, heading into turn 7, a personal best in sector 1, halfway through the second sector, absolutely avoiding that sausage curb there. Hopefully that makes up some time, keeping the car nice, smooth, and steady there through the second chicane, heading out onto the oval section of the track. It is absolutely overcast. I don't think we're going to see any change in this weather. Spotting that braking marker there just past 200. Running a bit wide there, but coming up to the penultimate corner. It looks like a net improvement for Mark Anthony Eaton so far, about 6 tenths up on his best time through the final corner on the run to the line. Can he displace Vincent Da Silva for P6? No, he cannot. It's still P7, just a minute to go. Drivers will be on their final lap. Kimani Eastman and Vincent Da Silva are still in the pit, so it looks as though they are going to be relegated to P5 and P6 respectively, but Jaden Harrison still has his eye on that P2 or 3 or possibly even P1. Anything, it can happen, but it's all eyes on Kurt Moss and Jaden Harrison right now, the only ones I think who will be able to dethrone Plummer, who is sitting nicely on that provisional pole for the second round of the Chase for Pace Porsche Cup. Dissecting that first chicane there is Jaden Harrison, getting that car moving swiftly down the backstretch heading into P7. Jaden Harrison almost half a second up on his personal best, spot his braking zone and get the turn in right for the second sector. He seems to be getting it all right so far. Still half a second up on his best time. Now get the turn in right for the run up to the bank section. Don't run out too wide, back on the power, not too squirrely there, not too shabby at all. Is Jaden Harrison still about 5 tenths of a second up on his best time? Don't get too close to the barrier there, it will snatch you up, but he absolutely nails it, but he gets the turn in wrong. Heading into that penultimate corner now, the brakes are absolutely lit on fire, but he still, on average, is about half a second up. Around the final corner now, half a second would do him very well, but it's not going to be enough. He needed 7/10, and I don't think he was able to do it across the line. And Jaden Harrison will have to settle for P4. A 139.5 was the best he could do. Here's Luis Daniel Velez. I think he went off track just a little bit, so that will be an invalidated lap. So it's going to be P9 for the Panamanian. But qualifying has come to an end, and we can see it's just Joshua Brady there left to complete his lap. But by the looks of it, his lap has finished for him. So yes, it's the end of qualifying. Raven Plummer, an excellent performance from the American, finishing in pole position. Kurt Moss comes home just at 10th off pole position, 1.11, sorry, 0.11 seconds off pole position. Michelle Wallace, a second shy of Kurt Moss there in P3. Jaden Harrison in P4, 1.7 seconds off the lead. Kimani Eastman, 1.9 seconds, only 2/10 between himself and Jaden Harrison. Vincent Da Silva, 2 seconds off pole in sixth position. Mark Anthony Eaton, 2.5 seconds off pole in seventh. Roger Keller in eighth. Velez in ninth, and Brady in 10th. That was surely an exciting qualifying session there around Indianapolis Motor Speedway, around this road course here. These Porsche cars, the Porsche Cup cars, looking absolutely beautiful, especially with these custom liveries here. Well, it's going to be an exciting race off the back of an exciting qualifying session, heading down into that right-hander, 90-degree right-hander into turn one with the sausage curb on the inside in the rain. One would say it would be a recipe for disaster, but rather I think it's going to be a recipe for some exciting, delightful racing here tonight around Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Just a minute and 30 seconds until we will have drivers staged on the grid, ready to give us the race of a lifetime, heading into the first corner, a 90-degree right-hander, the first corner of, I believe, 14 corners of the 3.9-kilometer road course. Drivers will be using parts of the oval and parts of the interior course, snaking their way through Sector 1, Sector 2, and Sector 3. Sector 3 seems to be the most tricky part of the circuit, as it's semi-high speed, semi-slow corners. There are a couple of sausage curbs to watch out for as well, and a few chicanes that can make or break your race. It's only a 10th between the top two drivers, and only not about a second between third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So we're definitely going to be keeping our eyes out for battles up and down the field. And drivers are in their grid positions. It's going to be 50 minutes of action-packed, grueling rain racing here. Raven Plummer on pole position starts on the left side of the track, and we can see Kurt Moss just slightly angled towards the front runner. He's going to be wasting no time to capitalize on his placement on the right side of the track. He will have the inside for the first corner. It's going to be all about who gets the better start heading down into turn one. Drivers' lights are on and windshield wipers are active here out in the rain. It's dark, but I think we're still going to see some sparks flying heading into turn one. We have 6 red lights. And away they go, starting the race, the first minute of 50. And Kurt Moss takes the lead from Raven Plummer, heading down into turn 1, followed closely by Michelle Wallace. Raven Plummer going around the outside. Kurt Moss tentative on the brakes, and she retakes the lead. Kurt Moss will have to concede first position and slips back down to second. And here we have a battle between Kimani Eastman and I believe that is Joshua Brady on the inside making a move. Kimani Eastman losing out a few positions there, but it's still Raven Plummer from Kurt Moss, from Harrison, from Roger Keller. Eaton moving himself up into P5. Someone getting all squirrely there. I think that's Joshua Brady. Eaton there losing out a position to Roger Keller. Someone there going a bit too deep into turn 7. I think that was Roger Keller as Eaton retakes that position and is now back into 4th position. But Plummer seems to have about a half a second to a second's gap. It's 1.1 second between Raven Plummer and Kurt Moss. Just 4 tenths between Jaden Harrison and Kurt Moss now. And the top 3 are surely in a league of their own almost, but Kurt Moss there going a bit too deep. Jaden Harrison trying to get a sniff at that second position, and Raven Plummer is not quite getting away yet. 1 second the gap, but oh my goodness, it was quite a clean first lap, contrary to popular belief here around Indianapolis heading into that first corner. It's the status quo maintained for the top 3. Vincent Da Silva there losing out to the likes of Joshua Brady. Kimani Eastman falling down the order. So is Michelle Wallace, started in 3rd, now in 6th. Kimani Eastman now in 8th position. But Raven Plummer not getting the start she wanted. Kurt Moss is able to capitalize on that, but she was absolutely the bravest on the brakes heading into turn 1. And here's Kurt Moss there getting a bit squirrely on the exit of T6. Jaden Harrison getting a run going down into T7, but he's not quite close enough to make anything happen. Really late on the brakes there from Jaden Harrison. Kurt Moss will be checking his rear view mirrors to wondering how did he get so close, only half a second between them. Raven Plummer extends her gap by 6 tenths of a second in the first 2 sectors of the second lap. 47 minutes on the clock. Oh my goodness. If the first 3 minutes were this action-packed, can you imagine the rest of the race? Here's a side-by-side action here between Velez and Da Silva heading into the bank section. Will Da Silva be able to take him on the outside? The outside remains the outside, and he gets an excellent move there on Velez. Heading into the penultimate corner now is Velez and Da Silva. Da Silva seems to have the position all sewn up. Raven Plummer with the fastest lap taken from her by Kurt Moss, taken from him by Jaden Harrison. An excellent couple of laps here. The top 3 seems to have stabilized a bit now. Drivers will be focusing, it's a long race, 50 minutes. They'll be focusing on maintaining their tires and ensuring that they don't get any damage, you know, and there's no mandatory pit stop for this race, but we may see strategy come into play as these wet weather tires, the drivers will be absolutely pushing them to their limits. They are a softer compound than what would be used in the dry, and so we may see a bit of graining start to take place. The top 3 absolutely dividing the field. There's a very evident split between Jaden Harrison and Mark Anthony Eaton, who is currently best of the rest. Only 4 seconds, make that 5 seconds between him and the last of the podium places. But Roger Keller is within a second of him now, followed closely by Michelle Wallace, who is looking very eager to retake that position that he lost, or those positions rather, that he lost in the opening lap. I didn't see exactly what happened to Wallace on the opening lap, but he finds himself 3 positions lower than he started. in his own custom livery there. These these Porsche GT3 cars look absolutely amazing, especially in the rain. But there's Roger Keller running a bit wide, and Michelle Wallace making a run, heading down the start-finish straight. I don't think he's going to be close enough to make anything happen. But Roger there is going to have to keep his guard up if he wants to keep Michelle behind. Going a bit defensive there, heading into turn one, allowing Michelle to get really close on the braking. Going over the curb is Roger Keller. Michelle Wallace is all over the back of him, heading into T4 now. But it doesn't seem like anything is doing. Michelle biding his time. Very consistent and very patient driver is Michelle Wallace. Roger Keller, they're taking a bit of an alternative line there through the tricky chicane of T5 and T6. Michelle staying very relevant in this midfield battle here, and Joshua Brady with Kimani Eastman behind him, just a second and a half between them. But the closest battle we're watching here right now is between Michelle Wallace lining up Roger Keller for an overtake. It could be within this lap, it could be the next, or it could be in many laps to come. But I know for a fact Michelle Wallace will not be giving up on this fight anytime soon. Here we are closing out the third sector. Roger Keller there going a bit wide, but he's followed in succession by Michelle Wallace. Both of these drivers seem to be on the very same racing line. I'm not sure if Michelle is just following, but Roger goes a bit wide again as Raven Plummer sets the fastest lap. But I think this is going to be the time to do it. Roger Keller going defensive, heading into turn one. Michelle Wallace got the run of a life. Well, not quite the run of a lifetime, but it is a run nonetheless. Will he be able to go around the outside? Michelle Wallace just going a bit deep there, and we saw Mark Anthony Eaton coming under pressure from Roger Keller as well. Roger turning defense into offense. Now Mark is going to have to watch out from Roger behind, as the gap between Roger and Michelle now opens up a bit. Joshua Brady and Kimani Eastman, followed by Vincent Da Silva, rounding off the back end of the grid. Luis Daniel Velez, I think, had a bit of an incident and is 10 seconds adrift. But behind, in front of him, Vincent Da Silva, only 7 tenths behind Kimani Eastman, who finds himself in 8th position. But that gap seems to be opening up a bit. It's a bit of inconsistency here. One moment they're close, the next they're not. But such is racing in the rain, particularly in a mid-engine beast such as this Porsche 992 GT3 car. And we see there Jaden Harrison making a bit of contact with the environment, dropping a bit adrift of Kurt Moss now. Jaden in a race of his own now, if he can manage to keep it clean for the rest of this race. But Michelle Wallace finds himself back within a second adrift of Roger Keller, who runs very wide. He doesn't seem to have that final corner down to the T yet, and it allows Michelle Wallace to get right back in the slipstream, but it doesn't last very long as Roger Keller goes defensive again. This may just be his racing line. I'm not even sure if he is defending, but if he is defending, it's certainly working, as Michelle has not found a way past the Swiss as yet. And around the back of the field, we see Vincent Da Silva getting very close to the back of Kimani Eastman. Kimani Eastman now having to defend in the first sector. The gap is only 3 tenths between Vincent Da Silva and Kimani Eastman. But we're still on board with Michelle Wallace, who seems to be getting better corner exits than Roger Keller ahead of him. But Keller making the car very wide and not giving any obvious chances or opportunities for overtake. But here one may show its head. Michelle Wallace heads down the inside. Roger Keller sweeps back in, almost making contact there. Michelle had to back out of it. Here they are heading into the final section of the track here. Roger Keller there lifting, as Michelle Wallace doesn't seem to be lifting quite as much, and that seems to be the reason why Michelle is able to catch up so quickly. But back to the fight between Kimani Eastman and Vincent Da Silva. Da Silva not even a second adrift from Kimani Eastman. Those Porsche Matrix LED lights are bright in his rearview mirror, but Kimani Eastman with the dive bomb of the century on Joshua Brady. Joshua saw him coming and left the space, but Kimani there absolutely dominating Joshua Brady as they head into T4. Joshua just getting a better exit there, but all the while Vincent Da Silva looking to capitalize on these drivers ahead of him as Joshua Brady gets it all wrong. A big slide from him on the exit of the chicane. Joshua Brady there losing out. Kimani Eastman moving up a position, but Vincent Da Silva patiently waited and managed to get 2 positions in the space of 2 corners, or not even a corner, as a matter of fact. Vincent Da Silva moves up into 7th, and Kimani Eastman will now have to try and get back what he worked so hard for. He worked hard for that P7 on Joshua Brady, and it was so quickly taken from him by Vincent Da Silva. But such is racing. Further up the grid, we see this pack here of Roger Keller, Michelle Wallace, and Mark Anthony Eaton coming around the penultimate corner. We have about 3 different races here on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. We have Raven Plummer racing all by herself up at the front. Kurt Moss racing by himself in 2nd. Jaden Harrison racing by himself in 3rd. And Roger Keller and Mark Anthony Eaton going at it. Roger moving down the inside, taking that position from Mark Anthony Eaton, but into the braking zone they go. Mark taking the outside, the traditional line, tries to go around the outside. Roger leaves the space, but there's a bit of contact, and Roger is now facing the wrong way. Michelle Wallace unfortunately gets taken up or involved in that incident there. They say rubbing's racing, but that's a bit more than rubbing, as we see Kimani Eastman trying to go around the outside of Roger Keller, but going a bit too far off into the dirt, and that's very unfortunate for Kimani Eastman, losing out 2 times in 2 laps. But Mark Eaton finds himself up into P3. Jaden Harrison was sitting pretty in P3, now finds himself into P5, now P6. He's trying to regain that P5 and does, but what in the world happened to Jaden Harrison? He was racing himself and now finds himself in this fierce battle in the midfield. Mark Anthony Eaton now finds himself in a P3, followed closely by Vincent Da Silva, who, ladies and gentlemen, just 2 laps ago was in P9. Now finds himself just scratching at the podium positions. An excellent drive there from the Panamanian, but it's not over yet, as we have Jaden Harrison hot on his heels to retake what was his, and Michelle Wallace behind him to retake what was his as well, starting in P3, now back down into P6. Jaden Harrison starting in P4, now in P5. The only drivers who, well, I was going to say that the only drivers who have not exchanged position are Raven Plummer and Kurt Moss, but Raven Plummer and Kurt Moss were involved in, and I think, the very first exchange of positions right at the start of the race, heading into T1. And there's a driver, Joshua Brady, missing his braking points and heading straight into the barrier of T1. He's going to find himself now down into P9. So that moves the likes of Kimani Eastman up a position. It's all going off here. It has been a very eventful 3 laps, as we see. That may be evidence as to what happened to Jaden Harrison that found him down in P5, just going a bit too quickly there through the chicane. The tires probably screaming out for a bit of mercy on them as he runs deep into P7 as well. Michelle Wallace is not close enough to capitalize on that little mistake there from Harrison, but nonetheless they move forward. Roger Keller now trying to line up Michelle Wallace for that re-overtake. He had defended from Wallace valiantly so for well, for the entire first quarter of this race. We're now just past the 35-minute mark. Over, well, almost 20 minutes have elapsed thus far. And Vincent da Silva so far having a dream race, starting way down the order and finding himself battling for the last of the podium positions. He has a run here on Mark Anthony Eaton, but it's going to be very tricky going down into the first corner because Mark Anthony Eaton is a very late breaker. He doesn't go defensive. He is confident in his ability to just take the traditional racing line and keep Da Silva behind, but Da Silva seems to be closing that gap heading into the second and third corners here, because Michelle Wallace eyes Harrison, who just ahead of him in the bright red Porsche 992 GT3. Behind him is Roger Keller. The gap between them seems to be opening up just a bit as Roger is making one too many mistakes. Mark Anthony Eaton opening that gap between himself and Da Silva, and lives to fight in P3 another day, but going a bit wide there. Well, all three drivers seem to go a bit wide there. The status quo remains as it was for the time being. And here's Mark Anthony Eaton just getting up on that sausage curb just a bit too much, maybe allowing Vincent da Silva to get really close, heading into the ultimate corner of this lap here around in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It looks like he has a run on Eaton, heading onto the start-finish straight. Can he make anything of it? He wasn't able to last time around. Eaton now managing to extend his lead. We can see him pulling away, but Vincent da Silva later on the brake than Mark Anthony Eaton. Mark leaves the space, no contact is made, and it's an excellent try from Vincent da Silva, but now he's gonna have to focus on his rear view mirror as Jaden Harrison lights bright in his rear view mirror. He is itching to get past Vincent da Silva ahead of him, and we know he takes this chicane very quickly. Let's see if he manages to get any closer, but that gap seems to be stable between himself and the Panamanian ahead. A second between Mark and Jaden, and Vincent da Silva sandwiched between the two of them. I think Vincent wants that P3 podium position more than any of them surrounding him right now, and so we're going to see him try something like the dive bomb again. A very risky move there, but drivers respecting each other, giving space, no contact made, which is what's most important as we see them coming into the final section. Just a bit of contact there from Jaden Harrison, trying to brake as late as possible there. Not really disturbing Vincent da Silva's race, although it looks as though Jaden's about to get a better exit than Vincent da Silva heading into or through the final corner there. He got a better run, and it looks as though Jaden Harrison is tucked firmly in the slipstream of da Silva, heading down the start-finish straight. I don't think he's going to make a move for it. He is close enough to, but Jaden thinks better of it, moving really closely. No, just easing off the brake, but thinking better of it. Almost going into the back, then the side of da Silva ahead of him. Michelle Wallace just playing it safe, playing it cool, calm, and collected, waiting for the drivers ahead of him to just give him the position, as we've seen him do it before. Kurt Moss up ahead in P2, 11 seconds between him and Raven Plummer ahead of him. All he has to do is keep a clean nose, and P2 should be his. Raven Plummer, we haven't heard much from her since the start of this race. As you see Vincent da Silva running a bit wide, Jaden Harrison there to collect, but not close enough. Michelle Wallace also, just waiting to see what happens. a few more of those mistakes, and Vincent da Silva is going to throw away all his hard work. He has worked for that P3 position, starting way around P8 or 9, I think it was, and finds himself in P4. An excellent race for him thus far. 30-minute mark. The 30-minute mark has been crossed. We are almost halfway through this race. It's still raining, it's still slippery, and the drivers are still trying to get at each other, still trying to overtake. Here's Vincent da Silva now with an excellent run on Mark Anthony Eaton, but once again we see him just pulling away. I'm not sure if the setup is different or what, but Mark Anthony Eaton seems to be managing to keep Vincent da Silva at bay on the straights. He goes a bit deep, but Vincent is not able to capitalize on it. He's losing a bit of rear grip there, is Vincent da Silva. And here's Mark Anthony Eaton putting the car firmly in the middle of the road. Vincent is not having any of it at all and tries to move around the inside, but the inside turns to the outside for T5, heading into T6 now through the chicane. And Mark Anthony Eaton, I told you he was going to show some excellent racing, some excellent racecraft, and there you have it. He was definitely slower through that first sector, but he's still ahead, and track position is definitely what matters. There's Jaden Harrison late on the brakes, but managing to turn in time. He seems to be definitely using those brakes for all they're worth. Vincent da Silva seems to be keeping it all under control here, heading out onto the back section of the oval. Will he move to the inside? He does. But it looks like he had to lift there not to wash wide and not going down the inside there. I'm not sure if there was any contact between Jaden Harrison and da Silva there heading into that corner. Harrison goes down the inside of da Silva and tries to take the position. Da Silva running a bit wide there, maybe coming under a bit too much pressure from Harrison behind him, and Harrison is closing down that gap, but not able to get past as yet. They're coming up to the first corner now. Jaden Harrison dummies the move to the inside, and all drivers seem to have gotten their braking points except Mark Anthony Eaton, who got it a bit wrong into T1. Da Silva now takes that podium position. P3 is his for the time being, as Mark Anthony Eaton now will be getting that pressure from Jaden Harrison. We said it from peak performance through into the Radical series, through into every series we have had Mark Anthony Eaton and Jaden Harrison competing together in. And once again, they are together on track. No matter where they start, it could be P1 and P10. These two always find themselves close together on track, and we're going to see some excellent racing between them, as Kimani Eastman makes up a position on Roger Keller, who is falling down the order, now in P8. He's going to be joining Joshua Brady and Luis Daniel Velez, who I think is in the pits, making a pit stop. Here's Jaden Harrison getting really close to the back of Mark Anthony Eaton now, closing out the final sector. You can see him just momentarily losing the rear of the car there. Jaden Harrison taking the more acute line, heading around turn 13, struggling to get back on the power in these rainy conditions, but he does get a run out of turn 14. But we know that Mark Anthony Eaton will pull away. Will he pull away from him? Yes, it looks like he's pulling away, even though Jaden Harrison is in the slipstream. Vincent da Silva is going to be looking to just remain consistent and pull away from the two behind him, squabbling Jaden Harrison with a dive bomb. I don't think it was a dive bomb. I think he may have just missed his braking point. Going up too hot there into turn 1. Michelle Wallace just a bit too far back to capitalize on that error there from Harrison. And here's Roger Keller going deep as well into turn 1. But Michelle right in ahead of him, just about 2 seconds ahead of him. He's going to be looking to get back into the fray. And there's Kimani Eastman once again. Seems to have been battling with Roger Keller somehow, but got past him a second time. Fantastic work there from Eastman. But we're back on board with Jaden Harrison, who's just shy of a second away from the gearbox of Eaton ahead of him. Eaton getting a little bit squirrely there as they head around onto the oval once again, halfway through this race, and the field is almost upside down. And Jaden Harrison almost turned around there, losing traction as he moved into the braking zone of turn 12, coming up to turn 13 now, getting really close again to the back of Mark Anthony Eaton. But this is not the place to try and make a move on Eaton, as we know he has that top end speed going down the start finish straight. If he wants to get past him, he's going to have to get past him somewhere in the second or third sector. It's been over 25 minutes of grueling, action-packed racing here. Very close racing, as you see Roger Keller getting past Kimani Eastman once again. Somehow these two seem to be locked in a battle here, consistently exchanging positions. As this is Jaden Harrison just getting a bit there on the grass, but managing to keep himself still in this race against Mark Anthony Eaton and Vincent Da Silva. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be taking a short break, but this action will not be going anywhere as Mark Anthony Eaton goes a bit deep and Jaden Harrison manages to get beside him. He's taking the outside turns to the inside, but now the inside turns back to the outside for turn 14. And he's not quite beside him, but he manages to get a run. It's side by side in turn 14, heading back onto the start finish straight. But Mark Anthony Eaton's Porsche just seems to be built different. And he pulls a gap on Jaden Harrison after being side by side at the start of this next lap here. Jaden Harrison there trying to go around the outside as a response to Mark going defensive. Michelle Wallace eyeing the two drivers ahead of him. He just needs to get a bit closer, and the next time Eaton and Harrison have a scrap like that again, I think Michelle Wallace might be able to take it. Let's stay on board with them and see what happens. And ladies and gentlemen, we're back. And I seemingly have missed all the action, but here's some action unfolding right in front of us. Michelle Wallace there going a bit squirrely into turn 13, allowing Mark Anthony Eaton to retake the position which he gave away after after losing it to Michelle Wallace. It has been a give and take situation going on right here between these two Jamaican drivers. But it's Mark Anthony Eaton back up into P5, which is the position that Jaden Harrison had until he bullied his way past Mark Anthony Eaton heading onto the bank section in Sector 3. Excellent driving from those two drivers, as we expected. And here's Mark Anthony Eaton now trying to keep his car, keep his race alive from the charging Michelle Wallace behind. A bit squirrely there through the T5 and 6 chicane. But with just over 10 minutes to go in this race, we have seen one pit stop from Roger Keller, who I suppose he would have realized that it made sense to just take a pit stop, maybe change tires, take a breather, and go reevaluate and get back out on track. As Mark there seemingly run a little bit wide, but I think that's just his racing line as he maintains the gap between himself and Michelle Wallace behind. Jaden Harrison now 4.3, now 4.2, now 4.1 seconds behind Vincent da Silva. I'm not sure if he'll be able to do it, but never say never. He might be able to retake that final podium position from the Panamanian in the dying moments of this race. He can just see him ahead, as Michelle Wallace can just see Mark Anthony Eaton ahead of him. All the drivers coming down the start finish stretch here. Vincent da Silva, who found himself in P9 at one point in time, now on the podium. 27 seconds adrift off Kurt Moss ahead of him, who is almost 30 seconds adrift from Raven Plummer, who has absolutely dominated this race. From practice to qualifying, now almost to the finish, Raven Plummer has sat in on pole position and has sat in P1. It's a masterful drive from the American around Indianapolis, and we expect as much on home turf here around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Speaking of speedways, here's Michelle Wallace speeding down the backstretch, trying to close that gap to Mark Anthony Eaton ahead of him. The gap now just 8 tenths between them. Mark goes a bit off the track. Is Michelle able to capitalize? He does. And that's P5 for Michelle Wallace. Mark there making just one too many mistakes heading into that braking zone, and Michelle Wallace, patient as ever, manages to take P5. Two seconds the gap now between Eaton and Wallace. With just over 10 minutes now remaining in this race. The pit window closes in about 50 seconds. I don't think anyone else will be taking a pit stop, but just in case, Roger there, the only person making a pit stop, even though there's no mandatory pit stop in this race. Not sure if he was trying to stir up the field and start a strategy war there, but it doesn't seem to work out. It doesn't seem to have worked out for Keller, who currently sits in P8. The gap between Mark Anthony Eaton and Michelle Wallace now rapidly extending. Eaton seems to have fallen a bit off the pace. Not sure what's happening there. Maybe some issues on his side, but nonetheless, it's been some excellent battling between Eaton and Wallace, switching positions. I think Wallace was up to P4, well, started in P3 and was up to P4 at a point in time after losing out on that first lap. Now finds himself into P5, but I don't think there's enough time in this race for him to get back at the likes of Jaden Harrison, who starts, who looks like he's about to finish where he started in P4. He was closing in on Vincent da Silva, currently in P3, but doesn't seem like he's able to match his times on 140.7 from da Silva and Harrison there, but no one able to match Raven Plummer, who started on pole and has been in the lead of this race for every single lap so far. The red, white, and blue livery on her car surely making the fans out here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway proud. And she's absolutely putting on a show here, sitting in P1, 30 seconds ahead of the entire field. I think she's already, no, not quite yet. She's just about to lap Joshua Brady, who rounds off the rest of the field now. But further behind her is Jaden Harrison and Vincent da Silva. The gap was 4.5 seconds. Jaden Harrison has somehow found a second. That second now looking more like 7 to 8 tenths. The gap now just about 3.5 seconds between them. Jaden Harrison still pushing. We can see a bit of damage on that car. Battle scars from his fights out here on track around the road circuit of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, coming around the final corner, heading down the start-finish straight. Jaden Harrison absolutely wants that podium position, and it's showing in the times. A 141 from Vincent da Silva, a 140 from Jaden Harrison. He's taking his sweet time, or rather, he's actually pushing a lot. He knows he doesn't have much time left to get that position there. But Vincent da Silva has been very calm, collected, and consistent. So we'll see what happens as this race progresses. And here we have the graphic up showing that Vincent da Silva, he had started in P6 and moved all the way down the order into P9, came back up to P8, and fought his way back up through the field into P3. Jaden Harrison, as stated before, in P4 where he started, Michelle Wallace unfortunately lost out on the first lap and was down the order and now finds himself in P5. Mark Anthony Eaton, after starting in P7, finds himself in P6. Roger Keller in P8 where he started, Kimani Eastman losing out from P5 now down into P7, and Daniel Velez, unfortunately the only retirement of this race after having a bit of a rough time towards the start of the race. Just about 5 minutes left in this session, and it seems as though the action is beginning to die down as the gaps between drivers it's quite established now. 32 seconds. It seems as though I was gonna say it seems as though Raven Plummer is gaining a second every lap on Kurt Moss behind her, but here is quite the upset. Mark Anthony Eaton DNFing, went into the pit lane and shut his car off, promoting Michelle Wallace up into P5, Kimani Eastman into P6, and Roger Keller eventually up into P7. Joshua Brady will be finishing in P8, just inside the points. Very unfortunate there for Mark Anthony Eaton. He has been the center of attention here in the second round of the Chase of Pace Porsche Cup Series, but maybe some technical issues there on his side that were unavoidable that sees the early unfortunate retirement of Mark Anthony Eaton. if you're enjoying the racing so far, and if you missed Miami last time out, thank you very much for tuning in to the second round of the Chase with Pace Porsche Cup Series. The next time around, we'll be going to Road Atlanta, where we expect to see even more close racing from these drivers here. We'll be touring the Americas, taking this pinnacle of German engineering, the Porsche 911 992 GT3 race car. We will see whether or not um, Kurt Moss will be able to keep up to keep up with the young gunner Raven Plummer. Kurt Moss currently leading the championship standings with 12 points after taking the win out in Miami. But if this race finishes how it looks like it's going to be finishing, Moss and Plummer will be level on points. And for those who were not aware, for this series, the driver finishing in first position gets 12 points. Finishing in second gets you 10. Third gives you 8. Fourth gives you 6. 5 gives you 4. Sixth gives you 3. 7 gives you 2 points. And eighth gives you a single point. So currently, as things stand, the top two would be level on points. Vincent Da Silva will be putting his second batch of points on the board if he finishes in third position, which it seems as though he will, as Jaden Harrison got the gap down to 3.3 seconds, and it's now double that almost. So maybe just playing it safe and bringing the car home maybe is Jaden Harrison, as you see Vincent there. He not pushing at all. It seems as though he just wants to bring that car home as well. Just over a minute, about 2 minutes left in this race. I think all the drivers will have realized that the gap is maybe just a bit too much, and rather than risk losing out at the end of the race, just to bring it home safely. Can't argue with the drivers for erring on the side of caution. They've absolutely given me so much to talk about. Raven Plummer and Kurt Moss there at the start of the race. A lot of action there, going side by side into the first corner. And Kurt Moss, after snatching that lead of the race for a few meters, Raven Plummer was able to take it back in the first corner. Excellent racing there from both drivers. Vincent Da Silva, who started in P6, now finds himself into P3 after dropping way down the order. Definitely an excellent drive from the Panamanian. Jaden Harrison fighting with Michelle Wallace, fighting with Roger Keller, fighting with Mark Anthony Eaton. He picked a fight with every single driver here in the second round of the Pace of Pace Porsche Cup Series, and definitely gave us a lot to admire the racing prowess that he has displayed here around these 3.9 kilometers off the road circuit of Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Michelle Wallace managing to finish in 5th position after starting in P3, or rather not finish yet. let me not jump the gun. But with less than 10 seconds left in this race, there is nothing left for these drivers to do but to just bring it across the line and finish up. If he finishes in 5th position, Wallace will be taking his first points of the series. Roger Keller there starting in 8th and finishing in 7th. When he comes across the line, Joshua Brady looks like he's going to get lucky and get a snatch up a point there, finishing in 8th position at the end of this race. The checkered flag is being waved as the timer has run out. Raven Plummer, an excellent race for her after on the back of an excellent race in Miami after finishing in P2, now seems to have put those 100 laps of practice to use, and it definitely shows. Not a scratch on the car. It looks absolutely lovely, the stars and stripes as she comes around the final couple of corners to take her first win of the Chase for Pace Porsche Cup Series here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, coming around the final corner. Ladies and gentlemen, Raven Plummer, our winner for the second round. Cross the lap, having done 30 laps and 37 seconds ahead of the competition. Raven Plummer putting on a very Verstappen-esque performance here, if I do say so myself. She can finally rest that right foot, having had the pedal to the metal for the past 50 minutes of hard-fought racing. Kurt Moss, not sure if he's found his matches yet, but I'd love to see more battles between the likes of Moss and Plummer as Moss comes across the line to come home in P2. An excellent race from Moss, having come under some pressure from Jaden Harrison at the start of the race, but finishes in P2 with a comfortable lead ahead of Vincent Da Silva. Who would have thought we would see Da Silva up here in P3 taking the final podium position? Excellent drive for Vincent Da Silva. And coming across the line in P4 is Jaden Harrison. A hard fought race for him. He didn't have a moment to breathe, a moment to relax. Coming across the line in P4, followed very closely by Michelle Wallace in P5. Kimani Eastman yet to come across the line, just coming across, finishes up the race in P6, followed by Roger Keller finishing in P7 and Joshua Brady taking home a point in P8.
Hello.
Vince Da Silva. What an excellent result after a very, very hard fought race from you. Take us through your race.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for the event and the organization. And well, yes, I didn't practice that much on this condition, but in the first corner, I forgot to turn off the traction control in the start. And then on the first turn, when I throw it, I spin. So, okay, let's go for build up again the position. So just stay in pace, my pace, because I can't get any faster, and don't do any mistake, and that's the result at third place.
You had a plan and you stuck to it. The president of GT Panama, Vince Da Silva, found himself in P8 and finished on the podium. An excellent race from you. Congratulations on your finish there, Vince.
Thank you to Randall because he always helped me. He's a teammate of me. He always helped me with the setup. So I use the same setup for Miami, so I only put more air on this one and work fine. So this track is really flat like Miami too.
Well, it surely showed that you had a lot of pace and a lot of patience to wait for the drivers ahead to make a mistake. We saw where you managed to swipe up two positions by just being patient, getting past, I think it was Kimani Eastman and Jaden Harrison. I think I would call that the overtake of the race after, getting two positions, and it wasn't even in a corner. So excellent racing, and we can't wait to see you around Road Atlanta. Now we're gonna get our second place finisher, Kurt Moss, in here and have him walk us through his race.
Thank you guys. See you later on Rock Pattern.
Yo,
Kurt Moss, only 1/10 between yourself and Plummer in qualifying, and we see you guys, the running order remains the same, P1 and P2. But how was that race for you? Especially walk me through that start because that that had me on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, kind of. I braked a little bit too early. I didn't want to risk overshoot in the corner because I kind of braked where I would normally on coming all the way from the the last turn coming up. So I stopped like way too soon. So she got the run on me going around, and I just wanted to be careful. Didn't want to push too much and cause a collision. So yeah, but overall the race was a bit of a struggle. I kind of struggled for overall pace, and then for some reason the rain and AC triggers my motion sickness. So I was fighting that the whole time also. But overall the end result was good. Top hats off to Raven. She had a better pace. So it is what it is. Second place is still good, man.
Second place is still good, and that means that Plummer and yourself will be level on points heading into the third round of the JSRA Porsche Cup Series at Road Atlanta. A bit of a lonely race there for you, but it's still a very good result, and I can't wait to see what will how the battle will continue to unfold in the third round. So congratulations on that second position, Kurt.
Yeah, thanks, man. Hopefully I'll have better pace and give her more of a challenge in the third round. So thanks, guys. Respect.
We will absolutely be looking forward to that. But now let's hear from the girl who finished on the top spot of the podium. Raven Plummer started on pole and led every lap of the second round here around Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Raven Plummer, take us through your race. Raven, are you with us?
I am. I was just double muted. So, the trickiest part of the race was definitely the start. I was having a lot of performance issues in VR. So at that point, I was getting around 30 FPS, which is very difficult to calculate things in. I got super lucky that Kurt braked a bit early into T1. I still gave the space just in case, but after that, it was just a struggle to actually maintain that level of grip throughout the entire lap. With all the rain, it was very tricky, but very rewarding, and I greatly enjoyed it.
I think that's a perfect way to describe what racing these cars, the Porsche 911, 992 GT3 around, especially a track like this in these conditions, very risky, very difficult, but very rewarding as well. It looked like a bit of a lonely race there for you. A very, I
Mhm.
said it a little earlier, a bit of a Verstappen-esque performance there, but it was an excellent drive from you. You had us on the edge of our seat as we saw you
Thank you.
retake that position heading into turn one. Congratulations on this. Is this your first win with the JSRA?
No, because I did win the first race in the first round of the CTCC, but for the Chaser Pay Series, yes, it is.
Okay, I see. Well, congratulations on yet another win. And I can't wait to see what you're going to be doing at Road Atlanta, which is going to be the third round of the Chaser Pace Porsche Cup Series. Congrats again, Raven Plummer.
Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to the second round of the Chaser Pace Porsche Cup Series. Next round, we'll be heading to Road Atlanta, the 2022 circuit, where the drivers will continue their tour of the United States, and we're going to see how they fare with these absolutely mean Porsche GT2, GT3 race cars. I have been Kilvaden Roper, your commentator for the night, and I hope you enjoyed this racing as much as I have. We will see you next time. Take care.
I'm talking